Hello there, everyone. Welcome to week two. It was really interesting to read your week one discussions. Thank you for all the sharing that you did and the discourse between you all. It's always so interesting to see the differences between what's going on in classrooms and schools across the country, sometimes all over the world. So thank you for sharing examples. What I like about the discussions is that sometimes some people pick up on nuances that other people don't. So you might gain more from just the readings or the videos by hearing what other people are doing. So please continue to share. That makes the discussions so much more interesting. So it gives you more to respond to and interact as well. So thanks for the great job you're doing. Please keep that up. So let's talk about week two. I would like to give you some additional options so that we broaden what your options are for this assignment. As I said last week, I really like to, if we can, make the assignments as relevant as possible to your role and what you're doing, so that as you do this, you might be creating something you could actually use in your course or classroom. So I'm going to give you some additional ways you could approach this instead of the kind of limited way I feel like it's in there now. So we'll give you more options. So what are we doing this week? We are creating a slide presentation illustrating instructional innovations regarding the building and design projects in a STEM discipline. We're sort of doing that. So let me clarify as we go. Now, notice it said create a slide presentation. You're going to put everything in your slides this week. There should just be one document with your slides. So put a title slide in there that where you have the content that you would normally put on an APA title page. Just pop it in a slide, and you will need a references slide. So make sure that you format that per APA, even though it's on a slide. Still make sure you have a hanging indent or that you've italicized or capitalized properly. So, but you can put that right in the slide presentation. Okay. Oh, also, y'all, you are about to put way more info on a slide than we would normally want to put on a slide if we were using it for instructional purposes. That is absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. And in all of our courses, you typically get one assignment that's a slide presentation just to break things up. So please know, I get it that that's going to be more information. You can have multiple slides for one topic area. However you want to do it is fine, but please, it's fine. Don't worry about how much content there is on there. As long as I can read it. Don't worry about how much content there is on there. Okay. Now, let's go through the steps, and I'll tell you where I'm going to give you some additional options. So step one is where I feel like for me, if I was reading it, I'd be a little thrown off. So let me talk about step one first. It talks about selecting a STEM discipline of interest to you, meaning like that you would pick science or technology or engineering or math. But the purpose of the course is how we integrate those. So if you want to pick one of those, you can, but let me give you some additional options, but as I head into step two. So in step two, you're going to research the following. Then the first bullet point is define the field. So let me give you a whole bunch of options that could be the field. Okay, so I'm going to back up for a sec and talk about the videos for this week. So in the videos, they really focused on preparing students for engineering careers, like that's the goal. It's which is fine. I mean, we should do that. That's so important, and we need to expose students to that as an option. But it's so much bigger than that. We want all students to practice the thinking skills. We want to engage them in active learning by having them engage in thinking skills, much like a scientist or an engineer would. Doesn't mean they need to go into science or engineering. It's this process of thinking through that is important. So this is where you see things like, and this was in the slide I posted for the week two announcement. So the next generation science standards talk about this, and they call it the science and engineering practices. So it's the idea that students define a problem and then come up with ways to solve it. So they ideate. I was having a hard time coming out. Then they prototype, from their idea, they test it, and then it's iterative. So they might have to go back, learn from their testing, go back, make adjustments, test again, keep repeating until they find the best solution. So it's this process that we want to get students more involved with, regardless of what career they move on to. So the idea is that they're, learning from their ideas and then improving their result. So you might see this referred to in a couple of different ways. So we're going to make those ways the fields you can choose from for this assignment. So let me go back to step 2, where you're picking a field. So let me give you some options for what the field could be. It could be one of the disciplines of STEM. Like if you want to write about science, technology, engineering, or math as a separate entity, you can do that for this assignment. You are welcome to follow the assignment just the way it is in the instructions. However, you could also use for the field, you could use STEM itself because it's integrated. So you can define the field as STEM. And what is STEM? And I'll come to the next steps, but you could use STEM as the field. You could use design thinking as the field. Design thinking is a whole approach to learning. You could use the engineering design process. You could use problem-based learning, or you could use the next generation science standards, science and engineering practices. Any one of those could be the field that you use for this assignment. So it's just more options for you. So now what are you doing once you select the field? The next bullet is discuss the field's history in regard to instructional practices. So now you would write about a little, tell me, and not, it doesn't have to be a ton, but a little bit about the history of STEM, a little bit of the history of design thinking in education, the history of the engineering design process in education, the history of problem-based learning in education, or the history of the next generation science standards and the science and engineering practices. So I hope that makes sense. So these are just some other options of what you could write about the history of. So just a little bit of the history, like a paragraph, is fine. And then the present and future instructional innovations that have occurred. No, you can't write about future innovations that have occurred. Sorry, that's a little confusing. So let's rephrase. Don't worry about future. Let's say you could discuss the present and potential future innovations related to that field. So now again, remember, building and design is not literal. So when you see building and design in the instructions, stick to the field that you're writing about. So just why is it important? Tell me the why behind the why. So tell me a little bit of the history, but then tell me why is it important? Why is the next generation science standards using the science and engineering practices? Why would we want to use problem-based learning? What is the educational benefit? Why would we use design thinking and so forth? I think you get it. And then you give me something you would do using that. So if you've selected design thinking, what would be an activity you could do in your role using design thinking? So you don't have to invent the wheel here. There's plenty out there on the internet. Just cite it. If you borrow a lesson, just cite it. But what's something you could use in your classroom where you implement design thinking or the engineering design process, etc. And then the next bullet is describe why that innovation is a good fit. Perfect. And then determine and describe why or why not it could be used to bridge STEM disciplines. So here's the trick. Because we broadened what we're doing, then whatever activity you do has already integrated you're not just doing math. You're integrating something because you did design thinking. So that's what you're going to write about. So we've already kind of set you up to make that easy to write about. So in these bullet points, it doesn't matter how many slides you have as long as you cover it. You can have a slide for each one. You might have more than one slide. Just make sure you've basically covered those questions so I can give you credit for doing everything. I would expect to see you citing research in the beginning parts for the history and for the innovations that have occurred. So as you talk about the why behind the what is the research that is telling us about why these things are important? Make sure you have citations for that. And then maybe a citation, maybe at the end. If you've covered the why behind the what at the beginning, the end is a lot about just how you're integrating. So you should be good. So that gives you an idea of where you want to have resources. I would expect in this you would have 3 to 4 references to make sure that it's covered. Just give you an idea, and then that should be it. So if this was more confusing to you, reach out to me, and we'll make sure that you have what you need for this one. But make this work for you. Make it something that you might actually use. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm looking forward to see what you do with it.